One of the funnest parts of running a homebrew campaign is creating a weird locale. Whether because of some ancient curse or item or its proximity to some forgotten plane, these places are unique, dangerous, and they're fertile grounds for some of the most interesting stories of your campaign. I'm going to go over the list given in the Dungeon Master's Guide of weird locales, and I'm going to show how you can flesh out these kind of one-line descriptions using 3 principles that I always think about when I'm creating weird locales. So, let the weirdness begin. Hey all, this is KR King, and this is my YouTube channel dedicated to homebrewing your own campaign. I mentioned the list of weird locales given in the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 109. So looking over this list, you notice that the DMG seems to consider a weird locale either a geographic area in which the laws of the material plane are somehow altered or changed, perhaps through some planar disruption or some cursed item or some event that occurred, or it's an item itself that affects the area, creates something interesting in a specific area. And on the list, the geographic areas include the anti-magic or wild magic zones, the floating earth moat, the haunted battlefield, the canyon graveyard, the petrified forest or soldier areas. The fixed items on this list are the planar portal, the wishing well, the fortune-telling cave, the tree with a spirit, the mysterious ship, crystal shard, the river ferry, Barrow Mount. So when I think about developing a weird locale, I use 3 basic principles to kind of flesh out an idea. The first is, what's the story? Who created this, place or item? Is it some effect from some, battle or situation? Or is it, some wizard that did something, whether accidentally or on purpose, that created some zone or some area? Now, if it's just an item in an area, that's pretty straightforward, but it still has a history. It got placed here for some reason, and it's still active for some reason. But the history can be critical for the players to understand, what this is, how it works, how it got there, and whether or not to escape the effect or how to turn it off. If it's a negative effect, that history can be really important. The second thing is, what do the locals say? Right? What do the people or creatures around this area or in this area around this item, what do they say about it? What do they know about its history, its activities, its effects? This can be really used for the players. If they stumble upon this in some remote area, there still may be things around that know about it, but certainly if it's an inhabited zone or area, even on the outskirts or beyond it, people are going to have ideas about this. They're going to give you information. Then my last principle is, why are the players there? Did they stumble across this area or this item? Or did they hear about it and travel there? Were they sent there on a quest? Or were they sent there against their will? Especially if you have an area effect like an anti-magic thing, they could have been sent there as some kind of punishment. Can they leave, right? Anti-magic area, can you go in and go, oh, no magic here, I don't like this, I leave? Or are you trapped there? Or once you go into the cave complex or whatever, does the device itself prevent escape? Very important. Now on the surface, as I said, the anti-magic or wild magic area seems pretty easy to play. It's just the magic doesn't work there, or you roll on this table. And it becomes just sort of like a localized weather in an area, right? That's the anti-magic zone. But actually, if you think about a story behind this, how it came to be, and depending on the size of this magic area, sort of a society that has grown up there without magic, it can be very interesting for the players. The other thing, of course, if you have an area in your world, let's say it's a dead spot of some kind where no magic works, how does a society evolve there? This could be sort of a buffer zone between various kingdoms, diplomacy or whatever. A wild magic zone might be a refugee for criminals, and you go there at your own risk, so it becomes a very dangerous place to go. And so the society that evolves there, they're used to this danger, this wild magic, this sort of chaotic world. It could be a very interesting place. So going down the list, as I mentioned, the boulder carved with talking faces is pretty vague. You don't really have an idea of what's supposed to happen when the players encounter it. Does each face kind of have its own personality? Does it talk to the players? Do they talk to each other? Or the face is sort of like a magic mouth spell. It just says some specific command. Does each talking face give a different command? Is it a thing where you ask a question, the augury sort of thing, and you get a woe or weal answer? Are the faces there to warn something? Are you entering an area by which this boulder is a thing that says warning, there strangers are here or something like that? And you can answer all of these questions if you have an idea of who built the boulder with the faces and why they did it. Was it a guardian device? Was it a warning for anyone who approached it? Or was it a seer to answer questions? Did someone trap these faces in the boulder, and why? Is the boulder in front of a cave, over a grave, right? Are these faces, people, spirits trapped inside the cave complex or underneath? What do the locals know about this place, if there are any? Is it a place they avoid? Do they come and talk to these faces? Are they considered to be, a good omen or bad or evil magic? And obviously, if the players know about the history, they will go there for a specific reason, maybe to ask a question, maybe to investigate. And of course, if the players stumble upon this and say, it's a warning or something, warning for what? They're going to investigate, especially if the boulder is clearly in front of a cave complex, but again, underneath the boulder as well. So the Crystal Cavern prompt seems pretty straightforward. You go inside and you ask a question. It gives you some kind of answers. We assume this is sort of the seer mystic thing where it answers in a riddle. It's not clear whether it's like an augury spell, woe or weal, or it gives you something a little more detailed. But obviously the question here is, who made this place? What are they, spirits or angels, things from a different world? Is it just a magic effect? What's going on? Do the locals know about this place? And if so, sometimes you might have, if a certain person knows about it or a sect, they might control access to it. If there's a village here, this may be something they have. They're sort of famous for this or they use this. And then why are your players coming here? Are they coming specifically to ask a question? Is there something about this place, that information they have in terms of what's really behind it or something? Is someone controlling access to this place and denying others access to it? Is that why the players are going? The ancient tree holding a trapped spirit, that's one that's pretty easy to comprehend. The question, of course, is who put this spirit there and what is this spirit, right? When we think of ancient tree, we think maybe of fae or druidic magic, something like that, some sylvan thing. So in terms of this history, you do decide as the GM, is it a good spirit or a bad spirit? And obviously, correspondingly, whoever trapped it there or whatever event or some action that this person's spirit did. If there are locals, do they know about this tree? Do they just ignore it? Is it something that is best not to be messed with? And of course, why are the players going there? Are they going to free the spirit? Do they just stumble across it? And what do they decide? How does the spirit communicate with them to tell them it's inside the tree? This sort of thing. Now, it's kind of interesting that this chart just says permanent portal to another dimension, as though, there's no big deal. When in fact, that's an incredible thing, right? A direct link to some other dimension. And in terms of who made it or whatever, what's really important is that there is a nexus point between two dimensions, right? And creatures on either side of that nexus point are going to be very interested in controlling access to this portal. So my rule of thumb is usually portals are guarded by very powerful creatures on either end, unless they are forgotten. The players stumble across some portal. They're the first to find it. The history of it, as I say, maybe there's importance, some great wizard or something made this portal, but typically they're just fixed in time. It's just the activity, the action of the portal itself. So the battlefield of the fog that forms into humanoids seems like the classic cursed battlefield. The soldiers on the thing are either at some anniversary date of some great battle come out and fight this battle, or they have to atone for atrocities committed on the battlefield. Now, you could play around with this. You could say that these figures are non-combatants who were somehow slaughtered on the battlefield, or someone who betrayed the soldiers or something. And I'll include this, the field of the petrified soldiers, although you think this is going to be the work of Basilisk, Gorgon, or Medusa. But there might be some other effect that's caused them to be petrified. And once again, if you have locals around here, they may have heard of this battle. They may know that this is an area that you avoid, or you avoid at certain times of night. Next, we have the wishing well, and I would not have a wishing well. So the giant crystal shard sticking up from the ground is a very vague prompt, right? Now, it could just be some giant crystal, no great value, just there it is, but that's not much of a weird locale, right? What I tend to think of with this is maybe it's the entranceway to some crystal cavern, which can be very interesting because, you know, there's see-through walls and you might have crystallized creatures. Again, you might homebrew some creatures or something here. You can look in the books to see things, some crystalline piercers or something, stalactites. You also have the old crystal dragons of the 3rd edition. Maybe you incorporate those in this kind of thing. You know, and has it only been recently revealed, perhaps by an earthquake or landslide or something like that? If not, is it known to the locals? And I guess for the players, if it has been discovered, if they stumble upon this, or have they heard in the crystal caverns dwells some great treasure? All right, so for me, the wrecked ship in a place of nowhere near water prompts an idea either of a flying ship or some kind of planar ship, as opposed to just some ordinary ship that's been moved by a tsunami or water spout or something into a place far from water. Because if it is an ordinary ship, you know, it's of not much value. If you needed a ship, you could buy one probably cheaper than having this wreck hauled down. Maybe there was some great treasure in this ship if it's been lost and the players stumble across it. Obviously, if it's a flying ship or planar ship that's long been lost here or something, can it be activated again? Now, planar travel is going to change the campaign quite a bit, but even a flying ship is going to change things because it's a powerful item. Not only are powerful things potentially going to be in it or protect it, but if the players get a hold of it, they're going to attract attention flying around in a flying ship. So you just want to make sure that they're at a level that's appropriate for this sort of thing if you're going to let them somehow activate this thing. Now, it's interesting that the Haunted Hill or Barrow Mound are on the same prompt because they're really two different things. When we think of a haunting, we think of a ghost. A ghost has a story as to why it's there as a ghost. A barrow mound is, a burial place, but it doesn't necessarily have as much of a story, although, again, if these figures are from antiquity, they were great, powerful, evil figures, there might be something there. So the haunted structure you think more of as this ghost. Do the players want to go there? Do they stumble across it? Do the locals know about this? It's clearly a powerful figure. The barrow mound tends to just have undead, wraiths, wights, possibly a specter kind of thing. And in some way, the canyon with the dragon cemetery seems related to this, although it is quite a bit different. In terms of dragons having a cemetery, is it one kind of a dragon, or is there some kind of communal thing where they all get together, all the different colored dragons are buried in the same cemetery? Are dragons buried with their treasure, or do the other dragons want to take it away? Or do the dragons agree that there's a certain amount of the treasure that gets buried with a dead dragon? If so, then they might want to protect that cemetery. They might have very much of an interest making sure that, other lowly beings don't come along and try to loot the cemetery. So presumably the fairy with the spectral pilot prompt is somebody that takes you across a river or some body of water to some, land of the undead or something, right? It seems like the beginning, the gatekeeper of some larger adventure or larger place. And again, do the locals know about this? If there are locals, that's the land of the undead kind of thing. Thinking about this, when I looked at this prompt, one thing I thought of is, remember the coachman who takes Jonathan Harker to Count Dracula's castle in the original book and some of the movies? Maybe this is sort of a vampire that lives on an island or something. It might be interesting if to get to this island you have this spectral figure and you have to get on the ferry. So with the petrified or awakened trees prompt, once again we have something that there's kind of two different things, because petrified trees seem like they're frozen in time. Some event occurred. They were petrified in one sense, whereas awakened trees seem just like an area of the forest, sort of like Fangorn Forest in Lord of the Rings, where these trees are awake and sentient. They have a society there. And certainly the locals are going to know about these awakened trees this world, maybe stay away. They might stay away from the petrified forest as well, knowing that some great event occurred. Do the locals know the history of this event? What exactly happened? Can the players reverse the effect on a petrified forest? Now, the awakened forest, they're just going to interact with it, I would assume. And then finally, you have the floating earth moats. We tend to think of these as somewhat small, floating around like a mesa or pillar that holds a castle or tower, and that's how it's described. But certainly you could have larger earth moats. You could have whole, hexes earth moats. You could have a whole campaign based on floating earth moats over some vast continent or whatever. Again, in terms of putting it in part of your world, probably it's going to be smaller in scale, maybe just the size of a keep as in the prompt. So the questions about its history is, who created it? Are they still there, or the descendants of the creators, or have they passed away and other things now live on these moats? what's going on, why do the players come across this, they hear about it or they sent there. You could have some kind of moat prison, right, that they're held on if it's far up in the air and they don't have access to fly spells or something like that. So the history of it and its usage, locals, if it moves around the countryside, then different people see it, or does it stand to be in one place? Sometimes we think of moats as being in sort of inaccessible areas and stuff, but they don't have to be. And certainly even inaccessible, there are creatures and things there that know about the people that live there. So if you see the moat in the distance, you might be able to ask something, communicate with animals, or any humanoids that are smart, or people that might be there, tell you about the moats. So there you have it. The weird locale is a great thing to put into your homebrewed campaign. And if you think about the 3 principles that I use, the story behind it, what do the locals know, and why are the players there, you can pull these together much more easily just from a simple prompt like you see on this chart in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Thanks again for watching. Next week I'm going to do a giveaway thing, so look forward to that. I'm going to do a review and a giveaway. I'd love to hear comments. I'd love to hear some of the ideas you have for weird locales, or if you've tried to use the ones that are in the Dungeon Master Guide. If you like this channel, please subscribe. I'm always looking for more. In the meantime, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.